Anu is home today. Namaste. Oh, even Sonal is home. Wow. This is like a bonus class. Excellent. So who will give me a recap for what we did last time? Yeah. Yeah, Vishwani, you want to go?
Yeah, if no one else wants to, I'm happy to.
Okay, please go.
Um, so we saw in the last class when we covered actually the 17th and the 18th shloka that they're actually taken from the Kathopanishad, and the theme is death. You'd given us the very interesting history about how, Nachiket went and asked questions, and how Yamraj separates the intrinsic soul from the extrinsic, which is actually the body. And that's actually what Lord Krishna is doing in these two shlokas, respectively. And how we should not attach ourselves to what can be destroyed. So anything that has a beginning or an end, he says, is actually not even real. So that was the larger theme. Then, of course, we discussed how the soul actually has an intrinsic property called life, right? And the material body borrows that from the soul by sheer um, proximity. And but because, in the material world, there is, it doesn't have um, life as its intrinsic property. It experiences, I remember you said it's like a wave. It's basically coming and going. So everything that we see around us is actually dead, except that it has the proximity to something that has life. And this is actually why you had explained this to us, is because this is what Lord Krishna means by indestructible. You know how you were telling us that people, it is said that the soul actually resides in the heart chakra, and it's 1/10,000th of the tip of the hair. So we learned in these shlokas, basically in this, because the theme is death, and how he's telling us, Lord Krishna is actually talking about the properties or the characteristics of the soul. So how he says it's avinashi, no, avyasyaya, antavah, um, I've written something, anashinah, and aprameyasya.
Very
So
good.
these are the properties of the soul, and this is by Avinashi, which was indestructible. This is actually what he meant. And then, of course, we had digressed, but it was still relevant to a conversation how the soul actually doesn't have any needs or desires. And anything that we as human beings start obsessing over or giving too much importance to, it's actually all creating darkness for the soul. And the soul intrinsically, in its natural property, it doesn't need anything. It all stems from the mind. These are all mind's properties of the mind, sorry, and not of the soul. And it's a big characteristic of matter. You were saying, we all gave examples how, like, in the past, we as human beings, we always tend to being attached to the, like, which is a characteristic of matter, being attached to the past. Like, jab ye hota tha, to I was better off. Jab, it was, even if in the present you're there, you keep still thinking about how it was. And you basically said that it's important, like you've been telling us over the years, to give your 110% to everything, but you cannot let it take over your mind. And don't spend all night, like, spend every living moment obsessing over it. There's a big difference, because I remember I only asked this question, like, when somebody wants to be successful and they really put that single tunnel vision. There's a very subtle difference which you pointed out, that anything that you constantly create in your mind is actually creating darkness for the soul, because the soul doesn't need, this need and desire are full properties of the mind,
Excellent.
not of the soul. So, and then we went on to discussing, how anything that starts with desire does not end well, that it just cannot sort of happen. So matter in its intrinsic form is basically all about desire and ego. And hence, you told us how everyone has this pursuit of feeling alive. when, you step out and you want to have, either with like drugs or just like being flashy and flamboyant, all of this is to feel alive. And then of course was that moment where you said that actually whatever you desire the most, you don't end up respecting. That was a big sort of aha moment for me from last class. It may not be directly relevant to the shloka in my synopsis, but because it was important and it was a takeaway.
Why was it a big aha moment? Like, what did you relate it to? Do you have a thought around that?
I mean, even everyday life, auntie, even from something like really small, mundane desires, it's like you're creating now, at least thanks to, access to this class and this knowledge, that at least I've become mindful. But this, you like create desires in your mind at like microsecond speed.
Yes.
You may not realize it, but everything actually is just a need or a desire. It's like a human, and I'm speaking for myself, and I'm pretty sure maybe for other people it's not microsecond, but every hour maybe, everything is a desire. Me, I related to obviously all these food or anything craving I have, right? Like I'll just be sitting and looking outside the window and ye man kar raha hai. It's all a desire, and the second it's fulfilled, it's like whatever, now next. And then even like the desire to, like you were explaining, to even if I wake up and want to exercise or do yoga, it's actually a desire. So for me, that aha moment was actually applicable to my full life, like in my everyday, that everything that we do all stems from desire, and desire and ego are just the base of matter, and we are human beings deeply rooted in matter.
Excellent.
Which is why for me that was a huge, like I call it a mind pretzel, when your mind just goes everywhere. It was a mind pretzel moment. And of course we had concluded by saying how Lord Krishna actually hopes that with 2.17 and 2.18 and the upcoming ones which you'll teach us, where he's actually teaching us properties of the soul. And there is a little hope that at least we'll be able to create a separation between the soul and the body, right? Like, for
Correct.
example, I don't know about the others, but before I started this class, this concept of Atma, body, mind, soul aligned was just, it didn't exist. It was like anything you'd read about. But now at least we little bit understand that there's a big separation between the two. So that is his attempt with these two shlokas. And, I think it's pretty amazing that these two that we studied are from the Kathopanishad, and the theme is death, because that's the one thing that, like, that human beings grieve over the most. And that those are the themes to teach us all these subtler lessons of, needs, desires, attachment, etc. And even though, that distinction or distance between the soul and the body, even if it may not be accessible, that at least and because we studied in the previous classes that, Geeta is a nivritti shastra, it's all about dropping,
But it is
that
not.
we can at least, but we can at least recognize that what is not the expression of the soul.
Excellent.
And, we don't weigh and like bog our soul down with all the matter related garbage that we do usually. So
Right.
that is just verbatim.
Very nice. Excellent. Excellent synopsis. Thank you so much. You never fail to disappoint.
I have lots of time to revise classes these days. You're forgetting I quit my job. I finally managed to make up, but I think it's very relevant to me right now because I'm experiencing the death of this is the first time in my life I've experienced death.
Yes.
So I think it's just the timing of what we're studying right now has just come at a very interesting point in life for me. And I can see myself every day leaning on the classes or the recordings to actually deal with grief in a way that I have never, I could never imagine that I could deal with it this way. And I get that feedback from people around me that they thought I'd be a lot worse,
Mhm.
given the nature of my relationship with the person who departed. So yeah, I'm actually very grateful for this and you right now.
Excellent. Any other thoughts? Anybody else has any thoughts? Anything that stood out? Manu obviously didn't revise. Okay, okay. So last class we did, mostly the attempt is to do uh, an explanation of a shloka so that it's relevant to the shloka. But in the last two shlokas, the 16th and now the 17th, and now we're going to deal with the 18th. These three shlokas are kind of pivotal in the explanation that Lord is giving, where he's creating, like Vishwani said, a clear distinction between what is and what is not. And from the point of view of a human being, we never we never forge that distinction in our normal life. We know that there is a soul, we know that there is a body. We also, because we are Hindus, we have some rudimentary understanding that they are kind of different things. And because we are Hindus, we also understand that soul is eternal and there is a Paramatma, and all of this is like common day, everyday knowledge for us. It may be really path breaking for the Westerners, but this is kind of daily knowledge for us. We have grown up with this, and yet we are not consciously aware of what the soul is and what the matter is. So this distinction is very important because Lord Krishna is going to talk about the two things separately. He's going to talk about the two things in the entire Gita. There are many things given where he focuses on the material, how to grow the material, how to realize the material. And there are many parts of Gita where he talks about the ethereal, the soul, how to make sure that that is saved or that is enhanced or worked upon in terms of karma yoga or bhakti yoga or whatever else. But unless you really truly demarcate the two separately, you don't even know what you're studying, because the study is relevant to either one or the other, right? So here he wants to make a clear demarcation between the soul and the body. He's saying what you are experiencing as life is your body's attempt for life, right? Remember this from last class. The body is actually dead. The mind is actually dead. It does not have any life. The life is coming from the soul. And the mind and the body on a daily basis is trying to be alive. Yeah, I'll say this again. Just an underlining of a thought that I had started last class. The mind and body on a constant basis, the only aspiration of the mind as well as the body is to be recognized as alive. How does this happen? How does this pan out? We all want to be noticed. Huh? Body image is a big thing. I don't need to tell you this. I'm sure everybody is grappling with their clothes or their looks or their hair or their, belly or big arms or, bags under the eyes like I have these days. Surely everybody is grappling with the body. Why is this important? Why is this important to me or you? Because the body wants to be seen as alive, wants to be seen. Everything we do is to get noticed, to get acknowledgement from other people that yes, you are there. Appreciation is a secondary step. Yeah, acknowledgement, you are there. Acknowledgement, you are. What acknowledgement? You are the body and you are the mind. Deepa spent all her life trying to get acknowledgement for her mind. She had lost hope with the body. No, body is not so important. Chalo theek hai, nahi bhi koi appreciate karta chale. My mind is alive. It is there. It is present. Yes, Deepa. Why the need to express yourself constantly? Why the need to exert yourself constantly? What are we living for on a day in and day out basis? It's a deep thought, deep question. What are we living for? We're living just for this. We should be seen as alive in our body and in our mind. I've written something, people should read it. I have worked on something, people should acknowledge it. I have created something. I am something, my body. Constant display or opportunities to display your mind and body. This is it. Every day, morning to night, you want to feel alive, either in your mind or in your body. Aspirations and desires are also related to this one. Aspirations and desires are also written. I want a certain brand of perfume. I want a certain piece of jewelry. I want a certain piece of clothing. I want a certain title. I want a certain job. I want a certain house. I want a certain car. Will establish my aliveness in this world, which is noticed by the world, which is acknowledged by the world. Everybody with me here? Can you guys understand that? What I'm saying? All day in and day out, the only thing that drives us is the requirement for us to feel alive, either in our body or in our mind. And desires that we harbor are a function of this fundamental requirement. Any desire. Can you think of a desire which is not this? For all those who are intellectually very, very creative.
Something for society.
Sorry?
Something for society.
I didn't quite understand. Did anybody else catch that?
I say to do something for society. If the desire is that also for profession?
Mostly, when you want to do something, is also for the larger society to recognize. I think I shared my example of donating, right? I went to the food bank. I wanted to donate something. I donate large quantities usually. Usually, the person in the food bank says, "Thank you, this is really great." 1 month I went and I donated, and the person didn't say thank you. It irked my mind. I registered it in my head. They didn't say thank you. Was it not enough? even in that donation, I had harbored a subtle desire, which I was also not aware of. I had the need to be acknowledged. If you are just donating, then you should do it गुप्त दान, जैसे हमारे यहाँ बोला गया ना, दान करो गुप्त करो. मगर हम लोग क्या करते हैं, दान करते हैं, इसका मेमोरियल हॉस्पिटल, उसका मेमोरियल स्कूल, एक बेंच भी डालते हैं तो उसमें नाम लिख देते हैं. This is a need to be alive, or this is a need to give? You're killing two birds with the same bullet. You're trying to feel good about yourself, and you're still trying to get acknowledgement. So, giving to society.
So,
yes, great. Yes.
So I have one question. So should we, if we're doing anything, and this is kind of going back to our discussion even yesterday, but if anything we do, in a way, we should try to not be acknowledged in a way. Like that's what we should be doing. Like, so for example, when I've been giving food, originally I was doing that, and then I was getting the acknowledgement, like you said, and I was giving. So I was like, oh yes, I'm giving, and they're giving me. Now I've started putting it in the boxes, as long as it's not completely perishable. So nobody gives me any acknowledgement. Nobody tells me anything. So I've been doing this purposely because I was thinking, I was like, oh, I'm getting like some benefit from them telling me.
See, so now it's not about, it's about your own mind. So it's not about giving it in a certain way. Whether you're giving it anonymously or you're giving it by taking credit, does your mind get affected by it? Let somebody give you credit. How does it matter? It doesn't matter to me. If it doesn't matter to you, then it's fine. But if
Okay.
you're seeking it, craving it, acknowledge that acknowledgement is meaning something, then you have to think again.
Auntie, I have a follow-up question to that. This food giving process, it always strikes a chord with me because of the work that I do. What if, so I agree with you at some level that whatever we do is to like get some kind of recognition, right? Like you said, ye maine likha hai, read it. Ye maine kiya. Like, when I cook something, I'm obviously looking for that, like, hey, did you like it? Tell me you liked it kind of thing. What if you like when I feed people or do this whole thing, my mind though doesn't work only. Like I feel like the only time in my life I'm doing any work without using the mind is when I'm doing that. So that is actually possibly the only part of my life where I have zero attachment, expectation, need for validation or anything. So
Beta, it's a process of watching yourself. This is, I'm not explaining this to you for you to change the way you do things.
okay,
I teach the class. I teach
it's
the
our takeaway
class.
from it.
It's donation for me. Like it's a service for me. Teaching my classes is a service for me. No, not different. I'm not thinking about it in an egotistical manner. But
Yeah.
if somebody insults me or somebody comes unprepared repeatedly, it riles me up. I know it riles me up. You guys have been witnesses to this riling up and anger that bubbles in me, and you also have been witnesses to me trying to control it or divert the conversation or not focus on it. Like I'm sure you are mindful in your classes enough to be able to notice this. So it's not about what you're doing and how you're doing it. It's about, is your mind still getting triggered? And if it is, it still needs work. So you can take credit, you can openly feed people, not a problem. But are you taking it inside you? You can be giving in anonymous boxes and still taking credit inside you.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not about how you're doing it. It's a more personal process of watching yourself as to what difference is it making to your psyche. You know, I have given my example again and again of my ego or my surety that nothing will go wrong with my life because I've done so much puja. Now that ego was slowly concretized, and layers of it were added to it till it was shattered when my brother passed. Right? And I've talked about it again and again in different forums. So we don't know how we are taking things. We don't know the layers we are adding inside us. And we have to be very watchful for those. It doesn't matter how you do things or what you do. If you don't take it inside, it's fine. क्या फर्क पड़ता है if I die today if nobody comes? I'm dead. But when I'm sick and nobody asks me, it bothers me. Right? फर्क पड़ता है. तो यानी कि जब मैं मरूंगी तब भी मुझे एक्सपेक्टेशन है कोई यार. फर्क पड़ता है. So we have to purge ourselves of this. And nobody else can do it for you. You have to be mindful yourself. It's a subtle point. It's not for masses. Again, this teaching is not for the masses. You have to be watchful of who you are on a daily basis. Are you acknowledging your mind and body constantly? Are you trying to do things for this acknowledgement constantly? Are you in a state of contentment and surrender? So you have to constantly be in a state of gratitude, in a state of surrender. Yes or no?
I was thinking of this example. I always have a tendency to be like, oh, I don't know anything. I can't really teach a class, or I can't, people have asked me to do certain things. I'm like, no, no, no. But I also have amazing teachers, but I'll bring my teacher. And so then there's I don't have vanity about myself, but then I have vanity about my teachers. It's like this, it's like an interesting thing where you can you treat one thing and then the next thing becomes a point of attachment where it can be, and then you have to unearth that part and remove that part too. And we've talked about in other classes, but just this constant removal process.
Yeah, but then you do go around collecting good teachers.
Right. So it's all vanity. I mean, ultimately, so you have to you have to remove it, and
yeah.
By the way, I'm not collecting more teachers since I've met you.
See, there are always people. I said yesterday in my session yesterday, I said you can learn from anything, not only anybody. So if you're not collecting teachers, you're mistaken. Please collect teachers. But let even simple things like, tissue paper be teachers for you. So that it's all in the mind, Sona. How we are processing. It's not about becoming detached from the teacher or not paying that kind of importance to the teacher. Can you do it for everyone? In the same.
What about the processes we do to that help us forget the I-ness? Matlab, kriya or chanting, or vipassana is I am a big fan of vipassana for that reason. For the first 4 days, you fully acknowledge everything your brain has to say, and then after that 5 days are silence, right?
I am asking you to not go through vipassana to do the same thing. Acknowledge that you are this. I'm saying the same thing. Acknowledge that you are doing this on a day in and day out basis. If you don't acknowledge, you don't know where the problem is. Acknowledge your mind and your body are trying to be alive, trying to get noticed, trying to draw attention. Acknowledge it. Be watchful of it. And remember, at the back of the mind, they are all dead anyways. What is alive? How do I acknowledge that? Continue to focus on that. Slowly, everything will shift in your life. There's a very beautiful story about Ramakrishna. You know Ramakrishna Paramhans. Everybody knows Ramakrishna Paramhans. Raise your hand if you don't. Okay. Even Manu knows Ramakrishna Paramhans. So Ramakrishna Paramhans was a devotee of the goddess. Everybody knows that, right? He was the Kali temple in Calcutta, near Calcutta, is very Kali Ghat is very famous for him serving there as a priest for many years. Yeah. So Ramakrishna Paramhans used to serve the goddess, the idol. He used to bathe the idol, he used to dress up the idol, he used to feed the idol, like, you know, he was a pandit, he was a priest, pujari. He would do all that service. One day, a devotee of the sect realized that there was a janeu on the idol. Everybody knows the janeu, the thread, the sacred thread. So he was very perplexed because janeu is not worn by women. So goddess doesn't have janeu. There are the 16 ways of alankar in which janeu is very important, but it is not done for the goddess. So when we are doing Murti Puja, there is a proper Shastra around it, and janeu is also a part of it. We offer janeu. If you've ever done proper puja, you will see that after the Abhishek and Vastra, there is always janeu. So one day the goddess had janeu on her. So the devotee is very perplexed. He asks Ramakrishna, why does the goddess have janeu on her? She's like, you know, it's. He's like, I was confused. I didn't know if it was a man or a woman, so I just put the janeu. Because there is no man and woman. In his mind, there is no man or woman. There is no gender identity. He's risen above identities. It's a small story to show he's risen above identities. He's risen above this kind of distinction or judgment. So we want to, inside us, cultivate that state where we are non-judgmental. We are in surrender. We are in servitude. And before we get to that state, there is nothing that you can practice to get to that state. I will again say that. There is no language for this. Just like there is no language for this, there is also no practice for this. You cannot do something to get to this state of neutral space. The tendency is to do something, but the opposite is to have to stop doing. Does that make sense? Do you guys understand what I'm saying? So how can I do dhan? No matter how you do dhan, you will have accumulate ego. How can I argue about something, or how can I present myself, or how should I introduce myself? No matter how you do it, you will have ego. When you're doing things, there is always ego. It is a space of silence where this ego can be quelled. It's a space of non-action where you realize these deeper things.
So then, as a householder, we're essentially, I mean, we've talked about this so many times, but it's just like this constant, we're in this constant doing and yet we're trying to cultivate this place of non-doing.
That's why you do it with surrender. You do not have any. So that's why Bhagavad Gita, very simple message, and I'm going to take years and years to explain Bhagavad Gita. The message is very simple. Do things, do not expect anything. Don't create stories in your head of what you will get after, or what you should have gotten, or what you got in the past, or what you will get in the future. You are constantly not living in the present. Tell your mind to shut up. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. After Khushbu. Hold on to the thought.
My question is, in one of the classes you gave example of Kabir ji, where you explained the concept of shaburi and patience, but you also mentioned that patience is not taking something which is not serving your purpose. Patience doesn't mean that you will take everything or every torture. So when we oppose something which is not serving my purpose, and I'm in a conflict and I withdraw, at that point of time, isn't it my ego working?
Well, see, remember this. God created this beautiful universe. There is something there. God is everywhere, all pervading. Remember, we read it in this shloka. God or universe or the soul or water, all pervading, it's everywhere. It's a very beautiful everywhere that was created. It's like a big celebration. Imagine you were hosting a party, Khushbu, right? If somebody was hosting a party, you invite a lot of people. You make good food. Why? So that people should acknowledge it. You invite a lot of people, audience, to acknowledge your creation, which was a hosting of a party or a celebration or something, right? We have this tendency to acknowledge. Now, because it is alive, something has to appreciate it. God created this entire universe. Then he also created an audience to acknowledge the universe. You and I are that audience. So imagine he created the universe, and then he also created the audience to appreciate, celebrate, and acknowledge the universe. The universe and the audience are made of the same substance, God. The object of us being here is this acknowledgement. That's why we continue to do it day in and day out. No? Acknowledge myself, acknowledge people around me. That's what I just said. That is the role of matter, right? That's what we've been talking about. So, like I said in my previous class, continue to do your very best. You are here to acknowledge your own creation. God is here to acknowledge his own creation. The problem is creation is thinking they are separate. You are thinking you exist. You're not feeling like you're one with everything. Are you feeling like that? You've forgotten. That is where the problem has started. So your job in this world is to enjoy the world. Do your very best. करने का मन कर रहा है तो करो, नहीं कर रहा है तो मत करो. कोई पूछने वाला थोड़ी है तुमसे किया कि नहीं किया. If you know for yourself that I couldn't face the challenge, so I stepped away, that is for you to know. Nobody else is going to come and question you. Do you want to live like a loser? That is up to you. You want to live like a loser? Great, live like a loser. You want to do something again, yet again, try again, do that. I would suggest do it. But nobody is going to question you. Nobody is standing guard कि भाई किया कि नहीं किया. You choose to do what you want to do. Yes, Deepa. Remind me, I want to tell you a story after.
I think my confusion comes from, on the one hand, we want to recognize that what is acting through us is the divine. And if we really believe that we are Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, so to speak, then every tendency within us has to be accepted and acknowledged as such, right? Like even our desire to, whether it is to serve or to consume, it is all a desire that is innate and that we have to propagate forward, right? So I think the example I want to use is like when I want to write something, and I've always wanted to write. I picked up a profession that would help me cultivate the skills. I have perfected to the best level I can in within my capacity everything I do at work. But when it comes to personal writing, I can't bring myself to write because there's ifs and many doubts about what I can and cannot write about. But then even there, like, should we not strive towards perfection in the work that we do? Like, because even the desire to create perfect art, right, or written word,
I'm not
isn't that,
saying no. I'm actually not saying no. Do the action with a state of I'm not the doer. So I would suggest, that's why the having a Paramatma or Bhakti Yoga is very easy. Do it for God. Don't take the ownership of the action. Don't take the ownership of anything. Don't take the ownership of anything at all, not even yourself, not even your looks.
but then the conundrum is that even
Do it for God.
the,
Nah, don't not do it. Just don't do it for yourself.
don't
There's
do it to
no
be
conundrum.
seen.
Don't do it to be seen. Do it to show God in you.
But you're saying don't do it to be seen even by yourself, right?
Correct. Your problem is you're not doing it. You're not doing it at all. You're in inaction. Why are you in inaction? Because you're afraid of losing.
Also, I'm lazy.
Hey, those are all problems of your mind and your body. Are you being your highest self at this moment? No. Are you living out the divinity in you today? No. When Khushbu backs out of a situation because she thinks she cannot win, is she living out her divinity in that situation? No, perhaps it's not possible to live out our divinity in every situation. But should we not try?
It's really interesting, Deepa. Like I was just thinking about this writing thing. So like Deepa and I were kind of talking about this writing thing and how I don't really write poetry, but sometimes, so I can't ever write any even like written word if I'm just kind of doing any kind of, but whether it's poetry or some kind of thing, if I'm doing it, but if somehow God is channeling through me, then suddenly I can write. Like it's weird. I can't write. If anybody asks me to write, then I can't do it. But if I'm inspired or like I'm somehow finding that connection to some deeper source within me, then I feel like the words come. So yeah, I don't know.
You have to
Maybe
connect
that's how
to yourself, right? You have to connect to yourself. For as long as your only connection is to your ego, then you have a problem. It's not going to end well. And Lord Krishna is telling you there are two separate things. There is an ego, there is a body, and then there is a soul. Yes. You have a question, Beta? Okay. So there is an ego, there is a body, there is a soul.
I mean, all perfectionism comes out of ego, right?
Correct.
So
yes. But people who recognize this and work towards this have a great work ethic. है ना? Hardworking people. These are hardworking people, and they know they're doing it for a certain objective. So successful people are, at least they have overcome one problem, the problem of lethargy in the mind and the body. That problem has been overcome by successful people. They also have overcome the problem of motivation. They have figured, they have cracked a way of motivating themselves to do it. Now it's only a question of pinning it elsewhere. You understand what I'm saying? So successful people can get there much faster than unsuccessful people, because they're already in the party, doing their very best to enjoy the party that God has created. They just don't know God is everywhere. So just move it from I'm doing it for myself to doing it for someone else. Or I'm not even doing it. Something else is doing it within me. Right? You remove the I from it. Somehow remove the I from it. These are people who get there. So Gautam Buddha, Ashoka, in history, in mythology, we find great examples of very successful people who have achieved the state of self-realization very quickly, because they're already successful. There is no limitation of the body and the mind. There is an expansion of the ego. At least they know what they're working towards. Donald Trump knows what he's working towards. It's unfortunate, but somebody like that can achieve self-realization very quickly. Very quickly, because you're already working very hard. You've already figured how to defeat all the material obstacles. You already have no problem of motivating yourself to do your very best. You're working 19 hours a day. So it's like there was a king, and he was very, very known for his exuberance. Everything was beautiful. Everything needed to be perfect around him. The women in his court were like beautiful. The design in his court was beautiful. He would use only the finest and the best. He was an extravagant and intent and a connoisseur, and he wanted only the best. He was immersed in his only objective was to have the most beautiful everywhere and the best everywhere. And he was the one person who was very, very far from spirituality. Very far from spirituality. Till he met Gautam Buddha. And it was recognized by the monks that, oh, this king, he cannot live a monastic life, because he's lived in such luxury. He cannot live without women. He's lived with all the women. He cannot live without comfort, because he slept in the best sheets possible. But he met Gautam Buddha, and he transformed the king. The king from then on lived in absolute poverty. He stopped everything. He stopped the women, he stopped the luxuries. He came out, he started living on the streets. That wasn't enough. He started living in hardships, in mountains. He stopped eating also. Where he was eating really good food, he stopped eating also. And at some point, he stopped drinking also. And the story goes that Gautam Buddha went to him and said, I really want to hear the veena. Can you play the veena for me? And he was, of course, since he was a connoisseur, he was a great veena player. And he picked up the veena. And Lord Buddha pointed out, if the strings are too tight, will you be able to play the veena? He said, no. If the strings are too loose, will you be able to play the veena? He said, no. So he says, O king, you are like those strings. Earlier you were too loose, so there was no music coming. Now you're too tight. You're going to die. There will be no music. You will not be able to see the music, hear the music. The strings have to be taut, neither too tight nor too loose, for the veena to be able to play the music. So my point being that successful people who know one extreme can definitely transform themselves and to know the other extreme. They're hardworking people. It's us, the lazy lot, the 99% mediocrity that doesn't get there. The 1% will get there, one way or the other.
I can't remember what class we talked about this in, but just that the idea, going back to this, that like, but the thing that's the most inflexible is actually like the mind for most people. And so like, I wonder, like when, as you get more successful, like your ego is so far out of control. Like I have a couple of friends who are like masters of their body and very, very successful, like, intellectually, but then their minds are that can be very inflexible to the layers of like, receptivity of spirit or surrender. And so I wonder, like, that last little push is probably very difficult for some of those people.
So it needs Gautam Buddha to do it. We don't need to make it our job. It's not my job to transform anybody who's not willing to change. Why are you making it your job? Why are you even judging them?
Oh, I'm not. I was just saying, I'm not trying to change them. It was kind of an interesting thing because I've seen people like that. And then I'm always like thinking, I'm like, oh God, they're such masters at everything that they do. Like it'd be so amazing if they, or we're taking it that level. And so it's just it's a thought that
one
comes.
step short. They're one step short. And maybe they'll never get there in this lifetime, which is fine. They've at least mastered one thing in this lifetime. We have many lifetimes. And we can go both ways, remember, you guys. We can go on acquiring, we'll get there. We go on letting go, also we'll get there. We should be masters in one of those two processes. Then we have some hope of getting there. Na ye kiya, na wo kiya, kya kiya? Either focus yourself on acquisition, become a master of that. The problem is you're like on two boats. On one side you want also, on the other side you don't want also. This straddling two boats is not going to get you there. Either pravritti or nivritti. You can't do both.
Can you explain that? Pravritti and nivritti.
Pravritti is doing good, adding, right? Adding good karma. Nivritti is removing what is not real. Remember, you only gave the synopsis for the last class where you explained these two concepts. These are two schools of philosophy.
So we can't do both though? Like that's what I meant for you to explain.
You can't do both. You can't do both. And क्या एक तरफ तो आपको heaven चाहिए, दूसरी तरफ आप बोल रहे हो कि body नहीं exist करती, soul eternal है. मतलब on one side you're craving material things, on the other side you are acknowledging the existence of an eternal soul. Like, it doesn't make sense. Does it make sense to you?
But all of life is that, no? Like, isn't the message that be in the world but not of it? So, but you have to acknowledge the material, you have to do the dan, you have to do the kriya, the yoga, everything.
No,
But
no.
to recognize in the end, none of it matters, right?
See, ऐसा नहीं है. No, all of life is not like that. We are straddling two boats. All of life is not like that. हम एक नहीं कर पाते तो फिलॉसफी में घुस जाते हैं कि हम थोड़े में जीवित हैं. Because we are not able to realize ourselves as materially successful beings, we try to console ourselves with all this spiritual activity. This is garbage. If you've not really learned how to win everything, this is garbage. You have to learn to win everywhere. You have to learn to do everything successfully. You have been given the body to live a life where you have to live. Once you've lived completely, desires will end automatically. Because you have not been able to live, you continue to create karma and desires. And you can't live with that reality, so you continue to give yourself this idiotic message that ये अच्छा एक philosophy class कर ली, थोड़ा बहुत दान कर लिया, मैं बहुत अच्छा किया. Tell me if that is not your reality.
I don't think like some people might live like that कि ये किया तो अच्छा किया, वैसे नहीं. I think when both the Advaita and Dvaita messages have helped me in their own way. Like
Maybe they've helped
Advaita,
you anyhow. I'm saying we are forming the 99% mediocrity. We cannot be the best in one or the other. You are consoling yourself here.
but consoling is an after thing. I feel like I'm able to live with less pain at the end of the day, right? Like
Fair enough, you're contending with
self-inflicted
karmic
pain.
debts and your patterns. It's fine. I'm saying we are the mediocrity. I'm saying we are the 99% mediocrity. We are straddling two boats. We are trying to not feel bad about our failures by compensating it with some kind of spiritual activity. What we cannot do properly, we justify it with spirituality. And this is a constant thing that your mind is doing. Don't take too much, don't take it personally. Your mind is doing it to make you feel good about yourself and your mediocre life. Not yours, like in general.
No, I accept the mediocrity for sure. Like definitely at mediocrity.
No, I'm not saying that. It's not you per se. It's a valid question. How many of us in this class are living at their epitome, at whatever they can do day in and day out? I only
don't
know
even
one
know
man
that
in my
is.
life who I've seen do it day in and day out. Right? I haven't seen anybody else live like that.
I mean, I would claim that I don't even know what that is, what that looks like, like what is my epitome of existence, right?
Correct. तो उसके लिए रोज उठ के रोज कुछ ना कुछ करना पड़ेगा ना. Are you Are you doing your 110% every single moment of every single day? Rather, every single, at least 50% of your day? No, you may be cramming yourselves up with activity. I'm not saying that is enough. Are you doing your very best, creatively your very best, physically your very best? Like I said, I've only seen one example of that in my life. I saw no one else like that. I wanted to keep it really close to me day in and day out. What inspiration. Let's do it like this. I continue to work very hard every day and I fall short every single day. I acknowledge my mediocrity. And you know what I say? आज class कराया ना, थक गई मैं. It was very tiring to teach like 19 people with their varied questions. I'm mentally exhausted. That's my excuse for not showing up the next hour after the class. We continue to validate our own existence ourselves. Nobody else has to validate it. Our mediocre existence is validated by us only. Hanji.
Sorry, I didn't quite get that. My understanding till now is that mediocrity is good. आपने ज़्यादा बोझ नहीं दिया दुनिया पे, आपने ज़्यादा उठन नहीं उठाए, आपने कुछ ज़्यादा गलत काम किया नहीं, and mediocrity में आप आराम से निकल जाओगे.
कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, 90% वैसा ही जी रहा है. और आओ और जाओ और आओ और जाओ और आओ और जाओ, तो आप संत नहीं बन सकते. मीडियोक्रेसी तो बड़ी अच्छी है. आप बुद्धा नहीं बनोगे, आप अशोका भी नहीं बनोगे. किसने बना किया है ना पूरा
रावण
करीबी है ऐसे ही लोगों से.
Right? Mediocre is better than being Ravan.
No. No, 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 no.
Ravan is better.
Yes. If you're Ravan, at least Ram will kill you. You will achieve moksha.
Ravan was like before he was born into that existence, wasn't he like the most devoted of Vishnu's followers? Isn't that what we said? So, so if he was that, then he was already, Somebody commented though, I would love that if you would comment upon that, about the idea of the middle path.
What is the middle path? First, you have to explain middle path. खाली middle सा नाम सुन के, term सुन के, middle path बोल दिया.
I didn't say it.
पूर्वा बताएगी किसने बोला है.
No, I was wondering that is he talking about the middle path instead of mediocrity? Did he interchange by mistake? But I think when I heard this story, I was very young. My dad told it to me. And what I remember from that is he basically don't feel or do or be anything extreme. So you don't have to be extreme of either. If you just tread the middle path is what I remember.
That's not what middle path of Buddha is. So first, you do your homework. You first understand what Buddha meant by middle path.
Okay.
Remember, I have told you oftentimes that there is something that your mind wants you to do. And to break that pattern, you have to do something that it's diametrically opposite. Yeah, to break that pattern. Remember that teaching? How do you operate? You operate. If your mind wants something, if your mind is telling you to do this, if your mind is telling you slap somebody, you should go apologize. Right? That is how you break the construct of the mind. Buddha's middle path is there, is about breaking the mind. Instead of some people go, so people go from living to say to a state of being agoris. Now, like Sonal. Sonal is like an agori. Extreme. Do something extreme. अगर ये मना किया है तो हम ये दूसरा चीज कर लेते हैं एक्सट्रीम करने से भी दूसरा पैटर्न बन रहा है वो पैटर्न भी ना बने इसके लिए मिडिल में रहो that is a completely different theory altogether not to mix up with this mediocrity that we are talking about instead of slapping somebody you go apologize to that person so that your mental pattern changes your judgment changes. That was the thought given by Gandhi. Buddha said, you even rise above that. Don't do one or the other. It's completely different. So your father gave you the right example. You gathered differently from. ये वही एग्जाम्पल हुआ जो अभी मैंने गौतम बुद्ध का दिया था कि बेटा पूरा इंडल्जेंस भी ठीक नहीं है बिल्कुल खत्म करना भी ठीक नहीं है मगर ये कौन समझ सकता है जो मैं अब बात बोल रही हूँ ये कौन समझ सकता है जिसने ना पूरा किया इधर ना पूरा किया उधर वो कैसे समझेगा जिसको पूरा करना ही नहीं आता जो मीडियोक्रेसी में जी रहा है वो कैसे समझेगा आप समझ रहे हैं मैं क्या बोल रही हूँ डू यू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट आई एम सेइंग राजा को पूरा करना आता था उसने एक तरफ पूरा किया फिर उसने दूसरी तरफ पूरा किया छोड़ दिया सब कुछ छोड़ दिया खाना भी छोड़ दिया पानी भी छोड़ दिया और कुछ टाइम रहता तो सांस लेना भी छोड़ देता जिसको दोनों एक्सट्रीम पता है और करने की हिम्मत है वो ही तो बीच में रह सकता है हमें थप्पड़ मारने का भी दम नहीं है क्योंकि हम लोग डरते हैं कि कोई रिटेलिएशन हो जाएगा सॉरी करने का भी दम नहीं है ठीक से अपोलोजाइज करने का भी दम नहीं है क्योंकि हमारा ईगो इतना बड़ा हम अपोलोजाइज कैसे करेंगे उसने गलती की है अब ये मिडिल पाथ नहीं है ये मीडियोक्रेसी है क्योंकि हमारे अंदर दम ही नहीं है दिस इज मीडियोक्रेसी दैट आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट we evade responsibility we evade action we make excuses for ourselves and sometimes those excuses are rooted in philosophy है ना अच्छा गांधी का नाम ले लो उसने बोला है नहीं मारना तो हमने मारा नहीं बुद्धा का नाम ले लो उन्होंने बोला है मिडिल पाथ तो हमने करा नहीं ये हमें अपने आप को समझाने के लिए we take all these stances right but this is mediocrity this is not middle path middle path is when you have done one and you have the ability to do the other and you've done the other and then you've come in the middle now म्यूजिक जिसने सीखा है कोई स्ट्रिंग इंस्ट्रूमेंट सीखा है ढीला करना पड़ता है फिर टाइट करना पड़ता है दोनों तरफ होना जरूरी है उसकी एबिलिटी होनी जरूरी है कभी करें ट्यून देखा होगा ट्यून करते हुए किसी को स्ट्रिंग इंस्ट्रूमेंट इट हैज टू मूव इट शुड हैव द एबिलिटी टू गो लूज इट शुड हैव द एबिलिटी टू गो taut right do we have the ability you and I do not have the ability we are mediocre people we do not have the ability to go extreme in one direction or go extreme in the other direction only when that flexibility when that play is there can you tune the instrument to the middle And that's why my constant encouragement to everybody on the class, do your very best. Do your 110% every day. Aspire. खुशबू का क्वेश्चन है ना कॉन्स्टेंटली, एस्पायर करो, अचीव करो, पीछे मत हटो. अगर डिजायर ड्राइव कर रही है तो डिजायर को भी ड्राइव करने दो, कोई बात नहीं है, दिक्कत नहीं है. एक एंड तो अचीव होगा. उसमें बीच में मिडिल पाथ लेके आके और अपनी डिजायर पूरी नहीं हो सकती, हम नंबर 1 नहीं बन सकते, तो हम नंबर 2 पे हमने सेटिस्फाई हो गए और हम दान कर रहे हैं, आजकल हम अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं, ये सब ठीक है. वी डोंट वांट टू गो देयर. It is not we don't want to go there, that is we can't go there. And I'm not apologetic about my mediocrity. I'm very mediocre. But at least I'm trying to do better than what I am. I'm trying. Let's not make those excuses and sit in these, self-made cocoons. I'm trying to find my divinity. I'm trying to find my epitome every single day. And sometimes I fail, and sometimes I make excuses. At least I'm aware I'm making excuses. And I'm not saying that's great shakes, but at least it's acknowledgement that I have a problem. Most people will make excuses, believe in those excuses, will make other people believe in those excuses, and live that life for the rest of their lives. Yes? Surely you've done that.
But like Shrinkari, like there's also this whole tendency. I don't know. This has been a recent shift. There's this innate voice, when something bad happens or something good happens, my brain tends to think कि ये भी ठीक है. And then just generally there's a detachment of, I don't know, sometimes detachment walks a razor's edge of like true detachment versus actual spiritual laziness, or physical laziness, all of those kinds, or inertness, right? Tamas. And पर कभी कभी mediocrity को देख के भी लगता है ये भी ठीक है. It's just, what is that state? Like for me now, everything is becoming okay. Like, ये भी ठीक है बोलते बोलते सब कुछ ठीक लगने लगा है.
That is fine, but that doesn't mean that you're going to, reach spiritual or material realization in any which way. That is fine. That is just
my brain just said वो भी ठीक है.
उसी में जी रहे बेटा. 99.9% people are coming and going. The world is so populated. Everything is okay. They're continuing to live their patterns. When they're breaking their patterns also, they're not big shifts from their current patterns. Like, you have to make big shifts. Big shifts.
Detachment isn't, it doesn't mean that you're not pushing to your full extent. Right? I mean, like a lot of people who are detached or like traditionally have always been like very, very, like, I don't know whether it's excelling or like doing their absolute best in whatever they're doing, are some of the most attached people that I've seen. So I don't know if I don't know. It's just a thought. Like, is that true or not true? Like if you're completely detached doesn't mean that you're not doing.
See, there are too many things that you're talking about, you guys. Yeah. Now you've come to detachment. We weren't talking about detachment. But now you've come to detachment. Detachment with action is the right way to go. Action with detachment. That is the essence of Gita. जो ठीक है वो तो ठीक है, पर उसके लिए ये नहीं है कि काम करना बंद कर दिया. अगर एक घर नहीं मिला तो कोई बात नहीं, ठीक है. उसके वजह से you should not get yourself excited or depressed or demoralized. ठीक है तो ठीक है, पर उसका मतलब ये नहीं कि काम नहीं किया उसके बाद. काम 110% करो उसके बाद. Detachment is required so that you don't build karma. जो ठीक है, जो दीपा की स्टेट है, it's an improvement from where she was because now she's not creating karma. ठीक है, at least acceptance. Acceptance का मतलब ये नहीं है कि inaction है. Do you understand what I'm saying? If this therapy doesn't work and I'm not getting better, that's okay. I've tried it, I've given it 110 and it's not working. That's fine. That doesn't mean I stop working on myself, right? I have to find an alternate therapy. Think about it in life and death situations. If one thing doesn't work out, that's fine. You drop that and you start with another. That is a state of an achiever, right? Now you're moving towards that 0.001% people who do not reminisce in whatever hasn't worked out, who do not create a plethora of karma in things that have worked out or have not worked out. They continue to work. They continue to work harder and harder and push the envelope, whatever it is that they're doing. Does that make sense? Do you understand? Yeah. You've gone from like a whole, thank God, I have like a lot of grace where I can answer these questions for you. But you've done a like whole entire philosophy. This one class contains all philosophy for anybody, anywhere. Yes.
Actually, this is for Shanli because I'm really curious. Shanli, aap ho kahan pe? Is that Portugal?
Yes.
Madeira. Yes, Madeira.
Yes, it's Madeira. How did you come to know?
A little bit of Google and all that.
That is him exerting himself. He needs to be
It
acknowledged.
is, yeah, met in south of France, Italy, Portugal, Spain था. Google के locations पे long cable route, Spanish roof tiles, दो ही आती हैं.
That's impressive.
See, that's an example. He had to say it. He couldn't keep himself from saying it. Why, Manu, think about it. Why did you need to mention it?
क्लास खत्म हो जाती मैं सोचता रहता कहाँ पे ये.
It's interesting. So, Lord Krishna has talked about soul and matter, and he's focusing on this whole thing about death. But last class also and this class also, we've talked about the need for acknowledgement, the need for feeling alive of the body and the mind. I hope that concept is absolutely clear to you guys. No, we've gone all around the hula hoop, but the essence was that there is an intrinsic need for us to feel alive because the body and the mind do not have that as an intrinsic character. Life is not an intrinsic character of the body and the mind. It's only a character of the soul. Anybody who exerts themselves like this is very far from the soul. Now, why are you here in the world? You are here to enjoy this party that God has created. God is only there in you. God is only there around you. There is no other thing. Yeah. So do your very best. This is not about containing yourself. It's not about containing yourself. If you want to express yourself, express yourself. Do it to the utmost. The only thing, the only caveat that you must take from Bhagavad Gita, do not change your action. In fact, up it a notch. The only thing you want to carry here, from this class is, are you aware that this is what you're doing? Are you aware as to why you're doing what you're doing? Are you aware that you want to get noticed? For as long as you're aware, it's fine, absolutely fine. For as long as you know you're not sleepwalking, you're doing it consciously. And when you're doing it, you know why you're doing it. Because my poor mind, it doesn't know that it's alive, so it needs to be known. It needs to, इतना सारा मैंने database में भर रखा है, बोलना जरूरी है मनु को. For as long as he doesn't say it, he'll not. His poor mind will not feel acknowledged for all the data that he's gathered, right? So for as long as he knows, his soul or his intrinsic self knows that his mind is doing this, it's fine, no problem. Does that make sense? For as long as you know, oh, you're doing a donation and you want acknowledgement, right? You're doing yoga. Vishwani did a great synopsis. She loves doing it. She loves the attention she gets after. She loves being able to articulate it because it helps her understand it better also. For as long as she knows why she's doing this and craving it. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to everybody? It's okay. It's okay to continue to do whatever you're doing. This is not a class that is telling you to change it. All Lord Krishna is saying is acknowledge that this is what is happening. There are two distinct beings. The being that is trying to get recognition, the being that is expressing itself, is the matter part of you. And as you continue to acknowledge it, as you continue to understand it, as you continue to move through life with this knowledge, you will find that you will become better and better in recognizing the soul characteristics. Just knowing that there is a beginning and an end. Just knowing that desires do not end well. You can continue to have desires. I'm going to crave pani puri, and then when I have the pani puri, I will catch a jaundice infection. That's fine, absolutely fine. Craving it is fine, having it is fine, all of it is fine. It's not going to serve my purpose ultimately, for as long as I go into it knowing that. That's the objective. That's the goal. The goal is that you should know separately that this is just your mind and body. This is it. That is the goal of this shloka. That is the goal of this class. For as long as you acknowledge, this does not require you to change your pattern of behavior in any which way. Just for as long as you know, that's enough. And then an added layer to it is that what you know is incorrect. What you know is only coming from your mind. It is not reality. Remember the example of colors? If something's looking blue, it means it absorbs every other color except blue. It doesn't have blue in it. In fact, it doesn't even have colors. It's our mind that is giving it that color. It's an electric node in our mind which is attributing blue to something. And our collective minds work in the same fashion, except people who are colorblind, where that nerve is not working. So we are giving color to the world. The world exists, but it doesn't have colors. The goddess exists, but it doesn't have a gender. The gender, the judgment is being attributed by our own mind. This is the second layer that you need to remember. I am the beginning and end of everything. I am the center of my universe. If you have a relationship with somebody, it's you who's creating that relationship. Ho gayi class. The other person has no contribution in that relationship. You are the center of your universe, and your mind is creating all this prapanch. तुम खुश हो तो अपनी वजह से खुश हो, तुम दुखी हो तो अपनी वजह से दुखी हो, दूसरे की वजह से कुछ नहीं. किसी चीज को इंपॉर्टेंस दे रहे हो इसलिए खुशी या दुखी हो रहे हो, दुख महसूस हो रहा है. Because you're giving importance to something, that's why you're experiencing it as happiness or sadness. Who's giving importance? Your own mind. So you are the center of your universe in terms of the external world. So that's the second layer. So what are the two things to take away before we go? I can't hear you, Vishwani, if you're saying something.
Sorry, I was saying that we need to be aware. Lord Krishna wants us to know that the mind, the body, and well, the soul as well are all separate, demarcated beings or areas or whatever we call it. And the second thing is that acknowledge this separation. And then the second layer to it is that everything that we know is incorrect. It is not reality. It's only an extension of our mind. And we'd actually done this in the previous shlokas when we discussed how the senses are flawed and everything we know as we know it is because of sensory perception. So inherently, it's basically a flawed concept. He just wants us to acknowledge that. It's not about changing patterns or anything. Just know this and that's good enough.
And before you even realize that it is flawed, you must know that you are the center of all this prapanch that is happening. You miss somebody because you give somebody that much importance. You can continue to hold on to them also if you give them a different kind of importance in your head. You see? When your lover is not with you, you're still thinking about the lover. So the lover is kind of seeming like in the movie with you, in the park with you, on the dinner table with you. It seems like it. Who's doing that? Your mind's doing it. Now say the lover has died. That same mind can recreate those beautiful moments. But the mind chooses to, oh, I wish now he's not there. Or she's not there. So all the happiness and sadness is a function of your own mind. You have the power to replace. But before you have the power to replace, you must know you are the center of your universe as you see it, as you experience it. Nobody else is responsible. Only you are responsible. And then people will say, do hard things do not happen to us? Does abuse not happen? Does incest not happen? Does Yeah, yes, some bad things happen. But how you choose to carry them is up to you. How long you choose to carry them is up to you. Some good things also happen. Also, sometimes we are the creators of some situations, especially when people are reacting to us. We can act differently, at least try out all possible scenarios of action before you take the control in your mind and say, okay, I'm not going to pay attention to it. So it's all a game in your own mind. It's a beautiful puzzle in your own mind. It's happening in your own mind. Gain control, at least acknowledge. Gain control of your mind. Start acknowledging it is happening from here only. My pain and sufferings coming from here only. There is some physical element, but how much I elaborate it is up to me. And as you do that, you will have more and more control in your life and lesser suffering. All right, guys. See you. Thank you so much. Thanks for sticking around for so long. I know it's late in the evening. Appreciate it. Namaste.